2024 was an absolute banger when it came to Japanese role-playing games. Rather, it was juggernaut entries to major franchises like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Like a Dragon: Infinite Wealth, brand new IPs like Metaphor ReFantazio, or even remakes and remasters like Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake. 2024 will be a very hard year to top in terms of the JRPG video game genre. Despite saying all of that though, when looking over the slate of video games releasing in the next year, 2025 appears to be no slouch in terms of the amount of good JRPGs that we'll be getting this year. So on this episode of Fantasy Kingdom, we'll be taking a look at all of the upcoming JRPGs releasing in 2025 as I give you guys the top 10 games that I'm most excited about. Before we get started though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel for more JRPG content. Also, hit that like button if you enjoyed today's topic. Anyway, from long-awaited remasters and remakes to brand new IPs and major releases in beloved franchises, my name is Ruben with Fantasy Kingdom, and this is my top 10 best upcoming JRPGs of 2025. Let's get it. Number 10, Suikoden Remastered Collection. Konami has finally begun to realize what the fans want. We want to see their extremely large catalog of video games stuck on older platforms to be brought over to modern consoles with updated visuals and gameplay mechanics. Take their classic JRPG franchise Suikoden that released on the original PlayStation. This was Konami's shot at the traditional turn-based JRPG that was extremely popular in the 90s. While the story of the game and the gameplay experience wasn't anything unique and different compared to its competitors, it was still a satisfying experience that fans of classic JRPGs can finally enjoy years later with remastered graphics. Everything from background illustrations to the battles themselves have been upgraded to HD in this remaster collection. Suikoden Remaster Collection releases on all current and last gen consoles, including the Nintendo Switch on March 6, 2025. Number 9, Lunar Remaster Collection. As someone that has yet to play either of the Lunar games, this remaster collection has me intrigued as it finally gives me a reason to visit this franchise for the very first time. I can't really speak about the game itself as I've yet to play the original games, but from everything I've seen on the game, it appears to give off Golden Sun vibes in my opinion. Unlike the last collection that we talked about, Lunar features impressive voice acting that has now been enhanced in this definitive edition of both games. Enhanced graphics, audio, and quality of life features allows a modern audience to appreciate this cult classic among hardcore turn-based JRPG fans. Overall, this is a franchise that I don't know if I would have ever got around to playing, but thanks to both games getting the remaster treatment later this year, I can openly say that I'm hyped about experiencing both games for the first time when it releases on all platforms sometime in 2025. Number 8, Tales of Graces F Remastered. While I may not remember Suikoden much from when I played it as a kid, and Lunar is a franchise that I've never experienced before, I definitely can't say the same thing about this next iconic action JRPG franchise, the Tales series. In fact, I've recently been diving into other Tales games, like the Tales of Symphonia Remastered, to help me with my content on this very channel. The Tales franchise has always had its own unique action JRPG gameplay mechanics that have only been improved on over the years, and Tales of Graces appears to be no exception. Despite the animation style looking relatively innocent, the Tales franchise has always had some pretty mature and dark themes, and I expect Graces F to be no different. I say that as someone that didn't play this specific Tales game when it released on the Nintendo Wii though. In this story, we see three young friends team up together to save the world when the three great nations go to war with each other. Obviously, this young group of friends will have to test themselves in ways they never thought possible in order to achieve each of their dreams and stop the incoming disaster. With quality of life improvements like the ability to turn off enemy encounters and an autosave feature, improved visuals and enhanced audio, and the inclusion of both DLC packs makes this version of Tales of Graces F the definitive way to experience the story either for the first time or all over again. Tales of Graces F Remastered is the closest release of the games on this list as it releases on all platforms on January 17th, 2025. Number 7, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D Remake. With the major success of Dragon Quest III HD 2D Remake, it's only natural for fans of Dragon Quest to be extremely hyped for the release of the next two remakes of the series, both Dragon Quest 1 and 2. While we haven't seen anything on either of these two remakes yet, outside of an illustration revealing that we are getting it sometime in 2025, it's fair to assume that we'll see a lot of the same incredible qualities seen in the Dragon Quest III remake brought over to the original two games. Without diving too much into the lore and the story of the Dragon Quest franchise, funny enough, both Dragon Quest 1 and 2 takes place after the third game, which is probably why it made some sense in remaking that game first. Well, that and the fact that Dragon Quest III was just overwhelmingly more popular. Still, if you're a fan of traditional turn-based JRPG combat with improved 2D graphics, then there's really no reason why you shouldn't be excited about Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remakes. Even if you're a new fan of the series, as long as you love vibrant and fleshed out stories with classic mechanics seen in games of that era, the remake of both of these classics should easily be at the top of your list to play in 2025. Well, assuming it does release this year, as it is probably the entry I'm most concerned about getting delayed, considering we haven't seen any footage on it yet. Either way, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remakes should release in 2025 at some point on PS5, Series X, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Number 6, Atelier Yumia, The Alchemist of Memories in the Envision Land. Another franchise I consider myself a newcomer to is the Atelier series. And I gotta say, my love for this franchise has surprisingly grown fast, as I immediately fell in love with the characters, alchemy gameplay mechanics, and most importantly, the colorful and vibrant worlds of these games. So obviously, you could count me as being extremely excited for the next installment of this franchise in the form of Atelier Yumia, The Alchemist of Memories in the Envision Land. This game looks to be the most ambitious game of the entire franchise, and via the gameplay trailers we've seen on it so far, it definitely shows. With a massive open world to explore, core mechanics that revolve around alchemy, and a cross between real-time and strategy combat, Yumia looks to be a game that'll appease fans of just about every subgenre within the JRPG genre. I wouldn't expect a story as dark as a Final Fantasy game, but as with other games of the franchise, the characters are extremely likable, and it probably won't take long for us to fall in love with each and every character of this game. And yes, I'm aware that there's another game of this franchise releasing later this year, but of the two, Yumia looks far more interesting to me, and I'm a little more concerned about the other game based on the fact that it takes place in the same world as the free-to-play mobile game universe. Anyway, Atelier Yumia looks to release on March 20th on all consoles. Number 5, The Legend of Heroes Trails of Daybreak 2. While I definitely haven't played all of the Trails games yet, as there's actually a decent amount of them, of the few that I have gotten around to playing, Trails of Daybreak may very well be the one I personally connected with the most. And I like to believe I'm not just saying that because of recency bias, although that could very well be the case. One of the reasons why I love this specific entry of the franchise comes down to the main protagonist and the side characters surrounding him. As one of the oldest main protagonists seen in a JRPG, it's nice to play as a character like Van, considering that I consider myself an older gamer myself. On top of that, I really like how innovative the gameplay mechanics are for Trails of Daybreak. While it still uses your traditional turn-based combat seen in other JRPGs, it also combines it with elements of otherworld combat in which you can hack and slash enemies to weaken them prior to entering combat with them. It's not a mind-blowing mechanic, and there's not a ton of other features that make this game stand out from other JRPGs or even other Trails games, but the combination of unique characters I connect with more than I have compared to other JRPGs, and the quality of life mechanics included with this entry makes it one of the best traditional JRPGs that I've played in a long time. So with all of this in mind, it has me extremely hyped for the next chapter of this incredible game, hence why Trails of Daybreak 2 claims a spot in my top 5 most anticipated JRPGs of 2025. Trails of Daybreak 2 releases on PS4, PS5, Switch, and PC on February 14th, 2025. Number 4, The 100 Line Last Defense Academy. Full disclosure, this next entry I'm putting on this list for one reason and one reason only. Because I'm expecting a dark, twisted, and out of this world story that'll leave me speechless by the time I'm done with this game. Why, you ask? That's because the 100 Line Last Defense Academy is brought to us by the very same people that gave us the Danganronpa series, one of my favorite video game trilogies, by the way. If you have no idea what Danganronpa is, then close out of this video right now and go play the 3 mainline games, because holy hell, those games are phenomenal. Anyway, the 100 Line Last Defense Academy is a strategy and tactical role-playing game that follows 15 students who must fight off waves of monsters that are attacking their school for 100 days straight. Outside of that, well, we really don't know much about this game, which I kind of like, because the less I know about a game created from the minds behind Danganronpa, the better and more surprised I'll be later on when the twists start popping out. As someone that's not normally a fan of tactical role-playing games, the 100 Line is not a game that I would have been that excited about if it wasn't for the fact that it's coming from the same people that brought us Danganronpa. Anyways, the 100 Line Last Defense Academy releases on PC and Switch on April 24th, 2025. Number 3, Lost Soul Aside. Until recently, I actually forgot about this game, and honestly, I didn't think it was going to release in 2025 anyway. However, thanks to a recent trailer, I was reminded of how impressive this game looks, and I was even more surprised when I saw that they are still planning for a 2025 release date. Anyway, Lost Soul aside, looks incredible, and in some ways it looks way too good to be true. The game clearly takes a lot of inspiration from Final Fantasy 15 in terms of the combat, the visuals, and even the storytelling based on what we've seen in the trailers. Lost Soul aside is an action RPG that follows a young protagonist who is looking to save his sister, and all humans from dimensional beings looking to destroy his world. The combat looks extremely smooth and fluent, almost as smooth as Kingdom Hearts 3 combat system, which is probably why this game appeals to me so much. I'm trying to manage my hype levels on this one, as part of me wanted to put this game at the #1 spot, but without seeing more about the story, I'm actually trying to be a little more hesitant about this game than a few others above it. Plus, part of me still doesn't believe that we are actually getting this game later this year, despite a recent teaser trailer saying otherwise. Regardless, Lost Soul aside, looks to release on PS5 and PC sometime in 2025. Number 2, The Legend of Heroes: Trails in the Sky the First. As I said earlier on this list, Trails is a series that I definitely haven't come close to completing every single game of this extremely large JRPG franchise. And whenever I talk to other big fans of the Trails series, they usually always recommend I start with the original game first and work my way through the series. That game being Trails in the Sky. Despite hearing that though, I have yet to play the original game of the Trails series. With the amount of games in this series already and the amount of other JRPGs on my long list of games to play, I just couldn't find time to go back to the oldest entry of the series. Well, thankfully, I now have a great way to visit the story for the first time, as the first game of the series, Trails in the Sky, is officially getting a remake later this year. And I don't mean your traditional HD 2D remake like Dragon Quest III. No, Trails in the Sky the First is a completely brand new remake with modern controls, graphics, and is all around a brand new experience that follows the same story that captivated fans of the series all those years ago. As someone that has become more and more invested in the Trails series, I'm extremely happy to play the first game of the series for the first time and experience part 1 of this 3-part story later this year. It's crazy to think that the Trails is getting not 1 but 2 solid entries in 2025, which is a massive deal considering that this franchise is slowly itching its way to being one of my favorite JRPG franchises of all time. Anyway, Trails in the Sky the First looks to release on PS5, PC, and Switch sometime later this year. Number 1, Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So straight out of the gate, I think I should address the elephant in the room. Technically speaking, this game is not a JRPG on paper. But considering all the traits seen in the game and the clear inspiration that this game takes from games like Final Fantasy and Persona, it just didn't feel right to not include this game on today's list. So I'm making an exception for this role-playing game. Anyway, Expedition 33 looks absolutely incredible. Everything from the turn-based combat system to the impressive looking world of this game just has me really excited. What's even crazier is that this game just literally came out of the blue when it was announced at the Xbox Showcase of all places last summer. The premise of the story alone has me intrigued. In this game, an evil paintress wakes up once a year to paint a number. When she does, everyone that is the same age of that number she painted dies. Each year, the number goes down one by one as humanity gets closer and closer to extinction. Expedition 33, as you would expect, follows an expedition team set on finding the paintress and killing her before she paints the number 33. Again, the premise is just absolutely amazing, and you know damn well that there's going to be one hell of a story here. As for the gameplay, as stated earlier, it primarily revolves around turn-based combat with time controls to improve the power of your attacks. In fact, watching the trailer kind of gives me Persona vibes in terms of the combat, but with more modern Final Fantasy aesthetics. Speaking of which, the world looks vibrant as hell, and visually, the game looks very impressive. I can't stop talking about this game, and everything about it has me hyped, which is why it claims the #1 spot on today's list for me. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 releases on Xbox and PC in summer 2025, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's gonna release on Game Pass Day 1. But that does it for this episode of Fantasy Kingdom. Hit up the comments and let me know what you think of my list. With over 30 JRPGs releasing in 2025, there's a bunch that I didn't include on today's list. So be sure to hit up the comments and leave your personal most anticipated JRPG of 2025 in the comments down below. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more JRPG content. Also, leave a like on today's video if you enjoyed today's topic. But thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Fantasy Kingdom. Take care.